Okay, the last video of the year, and it will be much shorter than the last one, I promise you. So all I want to do is tell you why it's so important to understand the polarity of a molecule. So much is studied about water. Because water has the two lone pairs over here, we learned in the last video that this side of the molecule is a partial negative and this side is a partial positive. So what this does is that means that opposites attract. And so if I have another water molecule over here, the partial positive on this molecule is attracted to the partial negative on the other one. And so what happens is it forms a very weak bond between the two molecules. Oops, I gotta draw that better. A weak bond is indicated by a dashed line, okay? We call that bond an intermolecular bond. Inter means between, right? If you go on the interstate, you're going between two states. So that's a force between two molecules. It is weak, okay? Not very strong, and it's very easy to break it, okay? So it creates a little bit of a bond between the two. The bond within the molecule, like that one between the H and the O, that's called an intramolecular bond. Those are within the molecule. They are covalent and very strong. So they don't break. But the intermolecular force does. And so what this means is that these intermolecular bonds, which we call dipole bonds, okay, those bonds are moderately strong. So if we have something like a gas, like hydrogen, or argon, or helium, there's no attraction between the molecules, and they just float around, and therefore they're a gas, because there's no attraction between the molecules. But when you take water, there is an attraction between water molecules. And because we have this attraction between the water molecules, these molecules will then stick together, okay? So there's an actual force bringing the water molecules together, and therefore water is a liquid, okay? But the bonds aren't super strong. If they were super strong, then the molecules would be brought together and form a solid. But they're not. And so this is the reason, it's the shape of water is the reason why it's a liquid. And it's also for this reason that water has a moderately high boiling point. It's also this reason that water has capillary action. If you have a thin tube, like a straw or a needle, water molecules will just line up, one attached to the next. Because the negative of one is attached to the positive of the other. And this is how plants pull water all the way up their trunks, is by this dipole-dipole bond. So if it wasn't for the shape of water, plants wouldn't exist because they wouldn't be able to use the polarity of water to pull it up the tree of the trunk. So polarity determines the fate of molecules and what they can and can't do. And these dipole-dipole bonds are perfect because they're strong enough to form a bond, but not too strong that you can't break them. They're in that sweet spot between too weak, and then you end up as a gas, or too strong, and you end up as a solid. And so all of biology, all of life is based on this dipole-dipole bond and utilizing its structure. And I'm just going to just iterate this with a quick example of DNA. And you learn this in biology, the structure of adenine. Well, you didn't learn the structure of adenine, but this is what adenine looks like. And don't get hung up on what all this means, okay? Okay. There's a lone pair of electrons right there, which makes that a partial negative. This is the structure of adenine. What does adenine bond with? Thymine, because thymine looks like this. And on this hydrogen is a partial positive. So the partial negative of adenine is attracted to the partial negative of the nitrogen. So thymine is attracted to adenine in that way. So, and on this hydrogen, or on this oxygen, there are two lone pairs, so this is negative. This hydrogen is partially positive, and so then there's also an attraction between those two. This bond is strong enough to keep the adenine and thymine together, but not so strong that you can't separate them when it's time to replicate. So again, it's in that sweet spot. It allows DNA to be stable enough to stick together, but not so strong that you can't break it apart and replicate. And so I'm just going to show you a picture of this. Here's what I just drew. Zoomed in is the dipole-dipole bond between the nitrogens and the hydrogens, the oxygens. So that's adenine bonded to thymine, guanine bonded to cytosine, and that is what makes up the bases of the DNA and allows the DNA to stick together but also to be broken apart. So if it weren't for polarity, again, life would not exist. So when you study chemistry, you are studying how life is created. And I think it's fitting that the last video of the year ends on why do we study chemistry? Because it explains the nature of life and how this world operates. And I'm always amazed when I think about all of the dipole-dipole reactions that occur in the human body, protein synthesis, breaking down of food through enzymatic reactions, the creation of hormones that affect the processes in our body. So when you go on and you study biochemistry, you will spend a ton of time learning about dipole-dipole bonds. Thank you, and have a good one.